So welcome, Dr. Pillai. Thank you for joining us.
Delighted to be on the show.
So I wanted to begin with a question for you about this topic of the remedies. Besides the teachings that you have outlined for the program, there are remedial rituals that you have prescribed, and you said that they are essential to the program. Can you explain why they're so important?
Why the rituals are important? I took time out to be on this show because I don't not only want to do this for those people who are on this program, but to create something that can give some understanding for everybody to know about the importance of sacraments. Sacraments or rituals or ceremonies, these are all the same. They are ritual acts to communicate with the divine. When I first introduced the rituals like breaking a coconut or cutting some lemons, Dyer once asked me that, why do you want to do that? Because those will be considered as cultic practices. And I told him, I'm aware of that, but I'm not going to just subscribe to what people may think about these things. Because popular thinking often, as you know, I told him, is not educated. But I am a specialist in ritual studies. And I know how valuable are they. Even if you don't meditate, even if you don't understand what works in communicating with the divine, is the ritual. And it is there in pre-modern, even aboriginal traditions, where they just go and call on God with some candlelights or incense or some sweet offerings, and then they say, hey, ho, ha. And I remember that one of the things I had read in John Mack's book. John Mack is a professor from Harvard Medical School, professor of psychiatry. He's now no more. And he's a person like me who is not worried about what the mainline tradition would think. So he just wrote a few books on how to contact with the divine or with the extraterrestrial. And when he was interviewing someone, a shaman, and then he said, how do you talk to God? And then she said, hey, ho, ha. And then the divine response, and then he's able to see, and then he's able to do the ceremony after that. A few meaningless sounds, apparently meaningless sounds, or outwardly meaningless sounds, can travel, like the sound can travel infinite distance. And there are so many galaxies, and then the sound that I'm making here are going there. It is science. Now I'm here in San Diego. I'm now making some sounds, and then the sounds not only reach to different continents, it is going everywhere to infinite levels, distances. Sound doesn't recognize time at all. It is everywhere. So on behalf of someone, the ritual specialists, whether they are priests or shamans, carry out and they advocate uh, for the people. And then I'm doing this ritual for you, and then bless these people. And then it's a very sophisticated science. It is not a meaningless ritual. It's all very sophisticated science, and it is found in every religion. It is the important way through which one could be in touch with the divine. In Christianity, it is baptism. In baptism, what happens is they sprinkle water on the incumbent who comes to be initiated into the tradition. And why do they do it? Why water? Because water is what gives you life. And not only what gives you life, water is God. Hydrogen is God. There are books now coming. And just to be in contact with, like, say, HHO in a glass of, in an evacuated, vacuum-sealed container where there is HHO inside water, you will see how your consciousness changes, and you are able to connect to the divine. So these are the reason why I'm giving all these examples is every ritual, including the most important one, which I have done several times, is the communion ritual, to drink the red wine and eat a piece of bread as a symbol for Jesus really works. And then I have read a book by Benny Hinn that whenever he does this ritual once a year, then there is the presence of Jesus there. I think that is enough introduction for you to understand the power of this ritual.